Hello. Welcome back. How are you feeling today? Okay. So, today is our 20th therapy session. And today we're going to be talking about something that can help us immensely in our relationships, in our interactions with other people. Now, if you like a reminder of what we talked about in our last session, you can watch it here. It should pop up on the screen. But let's begin with how your week has been. Every week I ask you to keep me a diary at the end of every day. Maybe when you're brushing your teeth, where you just record how you're feeling, how you've been feeling. So looking at the 4 main emotions: happy, sad, angry, and anxious. And I ask you to rate each of those on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being nothing, 10 being maximum amount you could possibly feel something. And I also ask you to try and uncover maybe the thoughts that underlie those emotions that you feel may have been responsible for or triggered those emotions. And I think, as I've said before, I think if you're not going to do anything else, this is the thing to do. It can help us step back and just have a slightly different relationship with ourselves. It can allow us to not be so caught up in ourselves, so consumed by our experiences. There is something about taking a pause at the end of every day and writing these things down, which creates a space in which we can begin to think a little differently about things. So let's take a look at yours. Is it there? Is that it there? Can I take a look? Okay, thank you. Okay, let's have a look here. Okay. Okay, so as always, good days, bad days. And I think it's interesting. I can see here that on some of the days you've given 2 scores, indicating that I think even on bad days, our mood still does fluctuate, which is important. Because I think one of the things that makes anxiety, sadness and depression, anger even, so overwhelming at times is the thought that it's always going to be like this. So keeping in your mind that emotions pass quite quickly. They come and they go, even within the course of a bad day. Helps us to panic a little less, I think, when we feel bad. Okay, so let's talk about relationships and our interactions. So, the place to start is with the fact that we are all internally focused. Our biggest influences come from within us. So if you think about the amount of time that you spend interacting with yourself versus the amount of time you spend interacting with others. Even when we think about others, we often do so in relation to ourselves. So, I feel like this, so they probably do too. And we do that without really thinking about it. It's an automatic thing to use ourselves as the point of reference. Now, this is not a selfish thing. It's a very human thing. A survival strategy, if you like. We have been programmed this way. If we don't pay enough attention to ourselves, we'll quickly become endangered, walk in front of a bus or something when we're not paying attention. Psychologists call it being egocentric. So this programming that we have to see ourselves at the centre of things. Okay, so what does this mean? So when something happens, it means that our default position is to assume that it's because of us, something that we have done. We are somehow responsible for it. And this tendency is stronger when that thing is a negative thing. Just looking at your diary here for an example. This is a good one. I think that a woman at work the other day, she was a bit short with you, a little bit critical, a bit dismissive. And your thought is, I'm bad. I'm annoying. I should have done it differently. And what's interesting is that we don't give ourselves the same kind of main part when that thing is a good thing. We have a tendency to dismiss our role, our part, when the thing is positive. I always think a good example is when someone pays us a compliment. We think, well, they're just being nice. We put it on them. The nice things become other people's responsibilities, if you like. Okay. Now, this is the case for all of us. This tendency towards egocentricity. You, me, the Amazon delivery man. We place ourselves at the centre of our world and we interpret things accordingly. Now, how does this impact when we are interacting with somebody else? Well, what it means is that we are a very, very small part of what is influencing them, despite how it feels. Because they're doing exactly what we're doing. Their thought processes, their cognitive processes, the way that their minds work is exactly the same as the way that our minds work. We may well be the person that is standing in front of them, but their biggest dialogue is going to be with themselves. It's almost as if there is a line of ghosts from their past standing behind them, whispering to them when they're having a conversation with us. And those ghosts are much more significant to them, a much bigger influence on them than we will ever be, simply because they've been there longer. So, going back to the example from your diary, the woman that was critical, a bit impatient, a bit moody, a bit short with you. Your default was to interpret this as meaning you'd done something wrong, and that's a very common place to go, particularly when we have low self-esteem, which so many of us do. When we are used to bad treatment, it's usual to conclude that we deserved it in some way. Now, I don't know this woman, but my suspicion is that the bad feeling that you bore the brunt of on that morning predated her interaction with you. It was more likely to have been something that happened maybe that morning or possibly 5-10 years ago. And she's kind of carrying this round with her, this bad feeling. It's very nice. It's very hard to be nice. when you don't feel nice inside, it's as if there's this bad energy that's created inside, and because it's an energy, we can't contain it. It has to be released at some point, and there's a tendency to project bits of it outside of ourselves onto the nearest receptacles, of which on that morning you were. Probably. We project it out of ourselves so that we no longer have to carry it, or for that moment we do not have to carry it. It's a release, it's another survival strategy, like a pressure cooker. It's a very human thing to do. We take it out on the people that are closest to us, physically closest or emotionally closest. Okay. So, I'd like you to consider this week a particular rule related to this. What other people say and do, how they behave, tells us more about them than it does about us, because we are all internally focused, internally driven. Our biggest influences come from within us. But I don't want you to take my word for it. I think it's a tricky concept to get your head around, because we are all so egocentric. So begin by observing yourself. Notice how much of the time you spend interacting with yourself, engaged in an internal dialogue, versus how much time you spend talking to other people, fully engaged with other people. And then when you feel you've got to grips with that, turn your attention to somebody else, a friend maybe, and maybe that friend is struggling with something. Notice how their behaviour changes towards you. You may be exactly the same with them, but depending on what is going on inside of them, you will notice that they behave differently towards you. Turn it over in your mind, because if you can, hold on to this as a truth, the reality, it can be a real game changer. No longer will you be at the mercy of other people's bad moods, critical personalities, evaluations of you. We can understand these things as a symptom of their difficulties, something that belongs to them, not us. It's liberating. gives us back some control over how we experience our days, our selves, our relationships. It's very grounding. But as with all these things that we talk about in our sessions together, just because I've raised it, suggested it, it doesn't mean that it's suddenly going to resonate with you, that you are instantly going to be able to pick it up and run with it. So we've got a couple of weeks now until our next session. That's a good amount of time, I think, to consider this new information, to let it sink in. Maybe we can talk about it some more in a fortnight. Okay, so I hope that was useful. It was nice to spend time with you today, and I hope that you enjoy whatever it is you're doing next. Take care of yourself.